Good day, Oxford, and welcome to our discussion of the COVID-19 vaccines and how they may impact you. From the outset, I want to point out that if you have a pre-existing medical condition that you think might compromise your immune system, we strongly suggest that you consult with a doctor, your doctor, hopefully, before you actually take the vaccine. I am Oxford First Selectman George Temple, and I'm here with Dr. Frederick Browne. Good morning, Dr. Browne.
Good morning, George.
In addition to being a board-certified infectious disease specialist, Dr. Browne is the Chief Medical Officer at Griffin Hospital. I want to thank Jeff Luff, Kristen Rosa, Town Clerk Margaret Maynor, and Oxford's COVID Compliance Officer, Madeline Taggart, for assisting with this program and providing the technical support to allow us to reach the public. Okay, are we ready to get into this?
Absolutely.
What is the difference between the Pfizer and Moderna vaccine?
So, George, the difference is actually very small. There isn't a big difference. The premise and the scientific platform that we actually use for both of those are the same. So what we're using, and we could talk probably more about this, I'm sure there'll be questions about it. We're using a technology called mRNA technology. And this mRNA technology, which has been around since the 1990s, is now used for the vaccines. And what they do is this mRNA encodes for a protein. That protein is actually produced by us when we're given the vaccine, and then we end up producing antibodies to that protein. So because it's very similar, this mRNA technology, the scientific platform is the same. Because of that, both Pfizer and Moderna use the same thing. The differences actually have to do with sort of age limits, and that's based on studies. It also has to do with timeframes in which you get a second dose and the way you store it. So Moderna needs to be kept at -20, while Pfizer actually needs to be closer to -70. So storage and transport is a little bit different. But ultimately, they're very similar, if not the same type of vaccine.
Oh, okay. Now, does a person have a choice as to which vaccine they receive?
So because of the limited supply of vaccines that we're getting, so any hospital like Griffin Hospital or vaccination center, you get an allocation. The allocation is either Moderna or Pfizer. So there's two pieces associated with that. The first piece is that if you come in to get your vaccine, you will get either the Moderna or the Pfizer. That's not as important as the second one. The second vaccine, so when you get the second shot, it actually has to stay either Pfizer with Pfizer or Moderna with Moderna. So we don't flip-flop them. We don't put them in an aspect where you're getting two different types of vaccines. So the manufacturer has to be the same, but getting that initial one, it appears, again, we want to keep them matched together, first vaccine, second vaccine.
Okay, we might have covered this, but what exactly is in the vaccine?
Absolutely. So besides some preservatives, you have to have some sort of mechanism to keep it where it is. I'm going to spend a little bit of time just trying to explain this, because I get a lot of questions about this and what it is, and what is mRNA. So I mentioned earlier, mRNA is in both vaccines, and this technology has been around since the 1990s. mRNA is actually a genetic code that we use in our body naturally. So natural cells, so if you have your normal function of your cell, you have your DNA, and then your DNA actually has to send messages to parts of your body to produce proteins. So what happens is that the way that DNA communicates to the other parts of your body is actually by messenger RNA or mRNA. That's its sort of communication means. That's its telephone line. That's its cellular network. That is its connection to say, we need you to produce these proteins. What's happened is that we've been able to take mRNA and develop it in the lab. All right? So we know the genetic code of the virus. We can take that genetic code and we can find the exact portion that encodes for developing certain types of proteins. And then when it develops that protein, we can actually have it expressed in our body, and then it releases that protein. So to put it all together, so what we have is we have the mRNA, right, from the virus that encodes for what's called a spike protein. So that's actually the S protein or the spike protein. So if you can imagine the coronavirus and all those spikes that are coming off of it, there's so many pictures now that are out there, all these spikes that are out there, that's actually what we're encoding, that kind of ball on that spike. That's actually the S protein. So we give that mRNA, it goes into our cells, right? It never touches the DNA. It just goes right into the mechanism and tells the body produce a protein. And what it's doing is it's telling it to produce that single protein related to the coronavirus called the S protein. That S protein is produced and then released in the body. And as that gets released in the body responds to it with antibodies. And that's actually how a vaccine works. So you show it a protein, you show our body a protein, antibodies then develop, and then when the antibodies develop, you end up having an immune response, and then next time you see the same proteins. The next time your body sees that protein, you develop antibodies. And that's how it works. So what's in it is the main ingredient is this mRNA. And then again, mechanisms to try to keep it, stable enough for transportation.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Is the Moderna or Pfizer, is one better than the other? Or do they have similar side effects? And what are those side effects?
So we've actually heard a lot, and I'll tell you that the hospital we did the Pfizer and then the Moderna and then now Pfizer and Moderna. When we first started doing the Pfizer vaccine, we had several people say, well, you know what, I want to wait for the Moderna vaccine. And then when we had the Moderna vaccine, everybody says, I want the Pfizer vaccine. There's been a lot of rumors about it, which one's more effective, which one has less side effects. I will tell you right now on camera that we haven't seen any difference between the two. The same scientific mechanism that we just mentioned, that same platform is there. So from an effectiveness standpoint, both of them are in the high 90s. So that means it's roughly 94, 95% between the two of them. That is actually amazing. Most vaccines are lower than that. They're potentially in the 70s. This is probably one of the most effective vaccine we've had in human history. That's how effective it is. It's actually very effective because of what it's actually doing and what it's producing. So that is the same. So I don't feel like if you get the Moderna or if you get the Pfizer that you're getting one's better than the other for keeping the virus away, for vaccinating you. The second thing is the side effects. I will tell you that the side effects are very similar no matter which one you get. The side effects typically, the first thing that people get is a sore arm. So anyone who's got the vaccine knows that they're going to have a sore arm. You are guaranteed to have a sore arm. And then usually after that, you end up having some difficulty. Some people do feel a little tired, some body aches. Some people think that they actually are tired the next day because their arm's sore, and every time they turn over at night to sleep, they wake up. So we don't know about that. But some tiredness, maybe some body aches. The worst we've seen is some fevers and chills, and so that can occur. And then if you get the second shot, they're a little bit worse. But most of this the first shot resolves within 24 hours. The second shot, maybe a little bit longer, 24, 36 hours. But that's the majority of them. We do see some outliers, and there are some different reactions and side effects, but that's the main side effect.
Okay, why can Pfizer be given to 16-year-olds and Moderna 18?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it really has nothing to do per se with its effectiveness. It doesn't mean that the vaccine is more efficacious, or doesn't work in children. The problem is the studies. So we could only get approval for areas that we studied. And so when there was recruitment for the actual studies to see who would actually be willing to take it or who was willing to do placebo, we really didn't get to the very young. And that's sort of why right now it's not recommended. There's no reason to think that it won't work. It just hasn't been studied in that population as of yet. And I think that's ongoing right now. Both Pfizer and Moderna are doing research in younger population. But that cutoff is just because of approval reasons. Because again, Pfizer probably had people that were a little younger. Moderna didn't have those younger people in their population. It wasn't enough. And I think this is important to know about safety. There wasn't enough of the younger people, the people 16 to 18. There weren't enough in the Moderna study to actually say, okay, this is approved at that age group.
Oh, okay. So maybe that answers my next question, is when will this vaccine be available for young children?
And the answer is we're not exactly sure, but I can tell you that right now, as I mentioned to you before, ongoing studies to determine, the lower limits to which we can give this vaccine.
Okay, and how much immunity do you have with the first dose as compared to the second dose?
So it looks like, again, between the two, it's very similar. So after you get the first dose, it looks like it's they're saying 54%. So 50 to 54% is what it is. So that means that, once you get that first vaccination, that first response, then you have 50% immunity. Best way to round it off. And that's for both, for Pfizer and for Moderna.
And then the second would be
The second one gets you,
95?
95%.
Okay.
It was a hair higher, probably just because of the numbers. It was a hair higher for Moderna. Moderna was 95. I think Pfizer was closer to 94. The interesting thing about that is that not only are you 94 to 95%, that's likelihood to actually get the infection. If you do get the infection, because 5% can still get the infection, right? If you do get the infection, you'll get less severe disease, which is also really important. So again, we're concerned of the larger population, the more people that get infected. The older population can actually, the problem is that they can die from COVID-19. That's why we have this vaccine. So if we are able to give the vaccine, even if you get the vaccine, the likelihood that you're going to have a serious illness is actually that much better. So it's really low.
Okay,
zero.
we may not know the answer to this, but if anybody knows, it'll be you. How long does this last? If you had both shots, how long could you say you still have the 95% immunity?
So also a great question. So the answer is we don't know yet. And I could tell you and again, I'll give you my opinion, expert opinion on this. The first thing we would say is, all right, if you get the shot, you're going to get immunity. If there were some early studies that were done in SARS-1, because this is actually the second SARS, right? This is SARS-CoV-2. In SARS-1, there was research that was done, and it looked like the immunity can last almost up to 13 years.
Ooh.
The problem is, and this is the problem, is that it was not as widespread as it is now. So the problem is that if you asked me 2 weeks ago, how long would this last? I would say probably a while. It probably isn't going to be an annual shot, and we might not need a booster. However, things do change. And in particular, the new strain that is out, the UK strain, that UK strain is infecting a lot more people. And the more people that get infected, the more likely you can develop mutations and changes, making it really important to get the vaccine. So if we can stem the amount of people who are actually getting infected, we can actually stop these mutations and these changes, and then the vaccine lasts longer. If there's a significant amount of mutation, what will happen is that we're all going to need to get boosters. So it's interesting because in the past we'd say if you get a vaccine or you don't get a vaccine. So if you choose not to get a vaccine, all it did was affect you. That means you were going to be susceptible to an infection. However, with this and this pandemic, if you choose not to get a vaccine, then it could affect everybody because you may be one of the people who are actually supporting this mutation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, in other words, the more people that get this vaccine, the more likely it is that we'll all be able to lick this particular pandemic.
That's exactly right.
And hopefully get rid of these masks.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
So my next question was whether we'll have to receive this vaccine annually. I think you very well answered that. Can someone with severe allergies get the vaccine?
So as you sort of started off and said,
from the injection.
Yeah. So as you started off, I think if you have allergic reactions to medications and have had allergic reactions to vaccines, you need to consult your physician and have a discussion with your physician. Again, trying to help here, but again, I think your physician will be the best to know. But I can give you some generalization. So the components of this vaccine are actually pretty minimal. And not a lot of them are associated with what we'd expect to see the common type of allergic reactions. They don't have eggs in them. That's a whole different mechanism for developing vaccine. So there's no eggs in them. There are certain types of chemicals. If you're allergic to those chemicals, okay, but they're pretty unusual chemicals. dyes that you could potentially be allergic to in the past. They don't have that in this. So really, there's very few things that you can have an allergic reaction to. So it would be tough to predict if people are. I can tell you, though, from the thousands of vaccines that we've given, we have had minimal allergic reactions. There's always a component of anaphylaxis, a very severe, very rapid reaction in which you have difficulty breathing. That does happen, but that happens with every vaccine. We have not seen very many of those, one or two occasional. So there's not a big number of those.
And are they pretty, well, obviously, if you're getting it in the hospital, you're right there. And
Correct.
You can get the Benadryl or whatever.
That's right. The vaccination centers have a kit right there. We can give epinephrine, like an EpiPen, something very similar to that. We can give steroids and we can give Benadryl. So we can actually do that. All of our stations actually have all of that available to do in case there's the rare case that there is anaphylaxis. But the whole allergic reaction, we have not seen that many. Now, people have developed side effects, but again, a true allergic reaction is low.
Once again,
I'm not going to say not, but it's low.
The key is to consult your own allergist.
Exactly. If you're prone to allergies, then I would follow up with your physician and run it past them and ask them, is it worth the risk of getting the vaccine, and are you at higher risk for actually getting COVID-19 and having some sort of bad outcome from the infection itself? And that's going to be a constant balance.
So it is possible for someone with an immune deficiency disease to get the vaccine and more than likely have no effect, correct?
So the issue with people who have an immune deficiency, people who are on medications that have their immune system low, the problem is that they probably won't develop a reaction to the vaccine, but then again, they probably won't develop a reaction to the vaccine, which is also bad. It's good and bad. Side effects are not necessarily a bad thing. That means that you're actually getting some immune response. People who are immunocompromised either by medication or have diseases that can lower their immune system, they may not respond to the vaccine. So they may be given the vaccine and they won't develop antibodies to it, and they won't be properly protected against the infection. So that's the concern, and that's where I would say you have to follow up with your physician and have that discussion and see if your immune system is actually low enough that it won't respond.
You can get a blood test to determine whether the antibodies are there.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Not that that's fun, but does either vaccine alter DNA?
That's why I spend a lot of time, and I've talked to a lot of different people about this topic in particular. This is why I go through the science of mRNA and sort of where it is. So the mRNA that is in this vaccine, delivered by a lipid coating, right, to get into the cell, it never goes into the nucleus. It just goes into the cytoplasm of the cell, so it actually never touches DNA. It's never at the point of the DNA. So the answer is no. It doesn't go there. There's just no mechanism for it to even interact with the DNA. What it's doing is it's going in and it's dealing with what are called ribosomes, and those ribosomes develop a protein. So we've just commandeered that communication network.
So it's not going to, make any difference to your, genetically speaking.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, okay.
That's exactly right. It's actually not. It does not go into your genetic code. It doesn't even go into the nucleus to even be. It's not even around your DNA. It is only in the outside of the nucleus where the DNA is, sort of like outside the command castle, as I like to call it, a whole bunch of different nerves. But that castle is pretty much blocked, and there's absolutely no reason for the messenger RNA, which its whole design is to be a messenger to develop proteins and then develop proteins. So,
okay, does the vaccine stop the individual from being a carrier and spreading the virus?
There's a lot of controversy about this. There needs to be more research that's done on this. That's sort of the official answer. And if you look at it from a scientific standpoint, the whole reason why we get vaccines is to prevent the spread of infection. What happens if you have the vaccine and you come across COVID-19? The body does two things. The first thing the body does is it develops antibodies and immediately eliminates the virus. If a virus actually gets into a cell, right? So if it gets into a cell, what will happen is that cell will be destroyed. So not only does it have the mechanism in which it identifies the protein, and attacks it very quickly with antibodies. But if a cell does get infected, that cell gets destroyed. So at the very least, there's a very, very, very small amount of virus that would be available, and you'd have to have a lot of close contact. And so the answer is that theoretically, no, it can't be spread. But I think we just need to be careful because there's a lot of people who are still out there. There's still a lot of people that have not been infected and not been vaccinated. Those of us who are vaccinated need to be really careful about wearing our masks and washing our hands until we get the okay from the state and the federal government to say, okay, it's now okay to take it off. But the more people that are vaccinated, the less likely it's going to spread.
By the way, I want to thank the Oxford Fire Department for our masks today.
Oh, yes.
OFD. Yeah, so in other words, we should still take the same precautions with or without. My feeling is that nobody knows whether you had the vaccine or not.
Yes.
And if you walk into a restaurant and you don't have this mask on, then other people get nervous, and it's not worth it.
Exactly, and I think that's our biggest picture. I mean, from a scientific standpoint, listen, the vaccine works and works really well.
Okay.
If you personally ask me, is it necessary? Probably not. However, I think to your point, George, I think you make an excellent point. It's now about us following the rules until we all have enough time to get vaccinated and be able to take these masks off together, which I'm hoping, hopefully, by summer we'll start taking these things off.
Well, I find I look a lot better with the mask on. But if I have had COVID-19, do I still have to get the vaccine?
Also, really good question. I get that question a lot. So COVID-19 infection. So after you get the infection, there's a period of time where you have natural immunity. The problem is that we don't know exactly how long that natural immunity is going to last. We do know that for the first 90 days after the infection, the likelihood that you're going to get reinfected is really low. And I mean a serious infection, not asymptomatic. Asymptomatic is different. But if you end up getting sick from COVID-19 and getting symptoms, then you're going to be natural immunity for 90 days. You can have natural immunity for 5 months, 8 months, or even longer. It's been proven that you have it for at least 5 months, and I think the CDC has actually come to agreement on that. It looks like 8 months. We haven't been doing this long enough, so we can't tell exactly how long, but it does look like there's natural immunity for that period of time. Now, that being said, we don't know how long. So the recommendation from the CDC is that if you've had COVID-19, then getting the vaccine may prevent you from getting it again. So that's the CDC's recommendation, is to vaccinate.
How long after you had COVID could you receive the vaccine?
And that's actually really interesting. There's been some confusion about that, and that's sort of why I mentioned the 90 days and the 5 months. I've heard that people are being told that they can't get the vaccine for 90 days. That's actually incorrect. They can get the vaccine on day 11 after they've been infected. People should not be going out on day after they got the vaccine, after they got COVID-19 and getting vaccinated. That's definitely not. If you have a vaccine scheduled, then you're going to have to cancel it. When you're infectious, you have to stay home, quarantine, get better. But you can literally, if you're better after day 11, you can get it. There's no indication to not get it. Now, I will warn that if you do get it, there is a likelihood that you're going to get more side effects. In fact, several people who have actually got the vaccine after they've been COVID infected, they will actually have a little bit worse side effects. What they've described to me is that they feel like they have COVID again, and that lasts for about 24 hours, and then it goes away. So that's just and then those who are actually further out or asymptomatic have the same symptoms as everyone else.
Can out-of-state residents receive the vaccine in Connecticut?
I think that's a no.
Yeah, I do too. I think we're not hoarding, but
I think it's mostly Connectitic residents. That's my understanding. I wasn't exactly sure on that, but
we have zones, right?
Yeah, we have zones. My parents do live close to the Rhode Island border. And when they signed up at VAMS, they didn't get Rhode Island sites. So I actually don't think so. I don't know if anyone sort of on the other side has actually done that. But, as people sign up to get their vaccine, make sure you put your zip code in. Make sure you put 06478 in. It'll give you everyone in the area, including Griffin Hospital. If you sometimes it asks for a street address. Sometimes that actually will give you a little bit of deviation. So make sure you put your zip code in. If you put your zip code in, then you'll be able to see all the clinics that are in the area.
I don't know if you can answer this question, but who's paying for the vaccine? I somehow think it's Uncle
Sam. I thought you got this. Didn't you say that?
Out of petty cash. Yeah.
Out of petty cash. Right now, it's a combination of, there's definitely federal and state support for this. And then we are requesting your insurance will actually pay for this also. So we are billing insurances. So make sure you bring your insurance card if you are going to get vaccinated. So insurance will pay a portion of it also.
And obviously, people that have Medicare, and, they bill that system, but it's still federal government paying
Absolutely,
for it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Has this type of vaccine been used successfully to combat other viruses?
So that answer is no, it has not. But it's interesting. I have a little bit of a story for you. So about 5 years ago, I was up in Boston at a biotechnology conference. And one of the companies that was presenting that day was Moderna. So Moderna was presenting, and they're presenting about mRNA technology. And very interesting, they said to me, and as you probably know, smallpox, which has been eradicated, smallpox is probably one of the most deadly and most infectious viruses known to man, right? What they said, and I thought this was so interesting, they said that if we had to make a smallpox vaccine, that we would be able to develop a smallpox vaccine in 6 months. So it's very interesting that 5 years later, not knowing that there was going to be a pandemic, that this company was already saying that it had the capability to do it. Now, I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, is this technology, which is the mRNA technology, has been around since the 1990s. We've been using it, we being the scientists have been using it to try to find solutions for cancer, solutions for genetic abnormalities, trying to produce proteins that weren't produced, develop antibodies against cancerous tissue. So this has been we've been doing research on this and developing studies and practicing the safety of this for a long time. Changing the component and changing it to developing a protein of a virus is not that much different. So again, even though it's not not that it's ever been used as a vaccine, and mostly it hasn't been used as a vaccine because of cost. Vaccines don't get reimbursed all that much. So a company that does vaccines could potentially lose a lot of money by doing that. But knowing that this is a technology, a scientific platform that's well established, has been used for other different areas to research on, makes me feel very comfortable that it's very safe to use and safe for our residents.
I guess a follow-up on the safety. Have these vaccines been FDA approved?
Yes.
Okay.
So both of them have been FDA approved. They've been approved through something called an emergency use authorization. And people really have some confusion about this sort of 9 months that it took to get together. So an emergency use authorization basically allows a company to do all the research and not worry necessarily about the costs. And that's where the federal government's been very, very supportive in getting this done. So all the research that you would do for a normal vaccine, all the steps, all the phases have actually been completed for this. I think there's a lot of confusion. There's no corners that have been cut on this. The difference is that the same time they were producing it, running through the studies, or I say going through the studies, they actually started production. So they were producing this vaccine when they realized that this is really gonna work. When they began producing that vaccine at the same time. So when the final approval came through from the FDA, we already had, hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of vaccines already ready to be distributed. And that's why we were able to do it so quickly.
That answers a lot of questions that I've seen on Facebook.
Yeah, doesn't it?
Yeah. A little bit of a sidebar here. My friend's sister-in-law works for Pfizer's.
Oh.
And she said, she's a chemist, and she said, that's all Pfizer's did for 8 months. Nothing more than this.
Yeah.
And, that's a lot of dedication.
That's a lot of science, a lot of dedication.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I do feel very comfortable. I feel very comfortable with the science behind it and very comfortable in how it was actually designed. And then, honestly, anyone who's ever gone through an FDA review process, FDA doesn't cut corners. They just don't. So if it's reviewed and okay by the FDA, it's reviewed by the FDA. Now there's monitoring afterwards because of the time frame in which, I mean, as I said, there's age groups that may not have gotten it. There's people who have different disorders that wouldn't necessarily be in the study. So it's really important that if people do develop side effects or there are any issues afterwards, there is actually post-production, post-distribution research that's being done also to see sort of what are the other, what potential smaller side effects can occur.
See, one of the problems that I have and a lot of my fellow chief elected officials in various towns is that this the actual vaccine disbursement is a moving target.
Yes.
It changes every day. It's very confusing to us as to whether where the sites are going to be and when the vaccine will be available. Griffin Hospital, though, is a major provider in this area. Now, could you put us or take us through how an individual might be able to order the vaccine or get the shot?
Absolutely. So I think during this, they'll put a number up that you can call to get scheduled. So right now, as of today, because things do change, right now it's 1A, which are people who are healthcare providers, that have close contact with patients. There's several lists. I would recommend, if you have any questions about that, the state site is actually really good about demonstrating sort of what is a 1A and what happens. 1B has not opened up yet, except for those who are 75 and older. So those who are 75 and older can actually also go to the state website. There is a sign up there for VAMS. VAMS will actually be able to show you which areas are around to actually get the vaccine.
VAMS is the CDC?
That's the CDC's program. Vaccine Administrator Management System, maybe?
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah. So,
I hate acronyms.
So that's where we would actually, so you can go, so anyone over 75, and later on when it opens up, anyone can go to that website and sign up at VAMS. Griffin Hospital has also made it a little bit easier for people to sign up, if you don't have email or you don't use the computer or there's other issues that are potentially there. We've been trying to help people sign up and we've been suggesting other people to sign up. I would start with the state first and then we can list some numbers. If you're having problems, Griffin Hospital can help those who are in the Valley get signed up for the testing. Right now, we are doing the majority of our vaccines are being done in Shelton at Progress Drive. This is the place where we do occupational medicine. We have the space that was appropriate to give vaccines. So we have people that are there that can help after you've done it. We can't do walk-ins now because, again, it's a federal program. But once people are signed up, they can go meet with our greeters. They can walk you through the rest of the process, get the vaccine, and then help you set up the follow-up vaccine.
Some people are concerned about the injections themselves, and they want to know if there's any interest in coming up with a more natural or less invasive procedure.
Unfortunately, the way that we can activate our immune system is actually by injecting. There really isn't another way. And this is an intramuscular injection, so it needs to have time to get into the cells. And then once it gets in the cell, if we took it by pills or we took it intranasally or eardrops or whatever else, the problem is that our body is designed to fight off things, including viruses like COVID-19. So if we tried to put this type of mRNA or this type of vaccine in any of those different areas, our bodies would digest them before they actually got there. So they'll just go, if they go into the stomach, the acid will just disintegrate it. So right now we don't see that there's a pill that's actually going to be able to vaccinate people. At this point, who knows what's going to happen in the future, but right now, we don't see that as a realistic alternative. So injections are probably going to be the way it goes for a while. We'll see. There's some new vaccines that are coming out. There might be a single injection. But again, we're looking to see how effective that is. That may not be as effective. It may not be in the 95% like everything else.
Yeah, the next question is a legal question. I'm the lawyer, and I'm asking it. So. But the question is, and I think I know the answer to this, what liability pharmaceuticals legally have for damages and the side effect or health complications from the vaccine.
I'll let you answer that question because I'm the doctor, you're the lawyer.
No. She's starring me. I had a case like this where somebody had a severe reaction to a flu vaccine, and we had to put a claim in. We put the claim in, and there's really restrictions as to how much money you can get, and you have to prove it, and it's no different than, I'm sure it's no different than the flu. So as far as can you sue somebody if you grow a horn in the back of your head? My answer was no. They don't have lawsuits; they have claims.
That's right.
And it's done through federal court. So.
Yeah, and as I said, that's my understanding also.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that there's no legal recourse. As you know, you can sue for anything. As I said, I think what's important is that people just need to know that. The majority that have been studied, the majority have received it, have done very well with it. And it's interesting too because we, at least from my profession, and if you go to our intensive care unit and you talk to the hardworking doctors and nurses and staff that are actually there, and you ask them if they're going to get the vaccine, there's usually there's not a hesitation to it because we've seen a lot. I mean, we've seen the worst, and the worst is that you can die from the flu, but COVID-19 is a whole different animal, and people are dying, and that becomes a good driver to get a vaccine. The question is if you're going to have some side effects. Let's say you have some bone aches and joint pain. Let's say you do have that issue. It's better than being dead.
All things being equal, I would agree with you.
Yeah, thank you. That was your legal opinion on that.
And finally, do you foresee the potential for restrictions placed on individuals who do not receive the vaccine?
That is a very hard question to know. I at least at the beginning, I see it might happen. I mean, we all are getting white cards when you do get vaccine. You get a white card that's there. Are you going to have to show your white card on a plane? I don't know. I really don't know. Are you going to be able to, go into certain areas like a hospital and not have your vaccine? I mean, I think from a staff standpoint, I'm still not sure if that's going to happen. It really depends. The important thing is that the more people that get vaccinated, we can reduce this to a few as opposed to a many, just by herd immunity. Just by having 60 to 80% of the population either been infected or end up having the vaccine, we end up knocking that out. So that leaves the other 20% of the people who choose not to get the vaccine. What happens with them? And the answer is I don't know. And I'm sure this is going to be. Honestly, I think all of us would love to have that debate because that means we're already out of the pandemic. So
I have heard, so that doesn't mean very much, but that there could be restrictions on passports. Mm-hmm. There could be restrictions on, for instance, if you want to go to Italy, Italy may not let you in unless you had the vaccine.
Right. Yeah.
So there could very well be travel restrictions.
I could hear that. I could see that happening.
And obviously in hospitals, I too had an opportunity to discussed this with several nurses, not just at Griffin Hospital, but Bridgeport Hospital. And you're absolutely right. They're lining up for the shots. Those women really are heroes. And,
absolutely. Absolutely.
But do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I think we covered all the pieces. Again, it was a real pleasure to come here, chat
pleasure.
with you, George. I really enjoy it. Again, I'm very pleased with sort of everything within town. So again, I think we've done a great job.
And anybody out there that has a question that you didn't think was answered or covered by us, call us here at Town Hall, 203-888-2543. Ask for Kristen, and we'll get you the answer. But we're not giving medical advice here. Right. If you're going to make a decision whether you get the vaccine, that's your decision. It's your body. But we're here to try to make that an intelligent decision.
Absolutely. I couldn't say any more. It's about the science. It's about what's out there. It's about getting rid of sort of those rumors and having more, true information. So anyone who does hear this, that if they could, this is sort of the truth, and it's important to share the truth, not rumors.
Thank you, and thank you, everyone.